architecture. I think a lot of the listeners know that, but it's depicted in art, in the news. It's everywhere. War, speech. We can even talk about backwards speech and symbols, music. It's absolutely everywhere. The programming of the Illuminati into this spiritual or religion that they live for.
Yeah, it's literally a spiritual hell, to put it as bluntly and accurately as possible. The whole world, if you want to know the big picture of the world, this is it. If you want to understand why we live in this slave grid that we discussed at the beginning of the show, it's understand corporatism. If you want to understand corporatism, understand the Illuminati. If you want to understand the Illuminati, understand their spiritual system, which is called dark ecstasy. As some listeners probably know, I don't even hold that the Illuminati is human. I hold that they're the Nephilim. I don't think it's the bankers that goes much higher up than that. The bankers are just tools in the totem pole, like all of us are actually. And the big issue is that we are physiologically created to respond to this dark ecstasy. And if a listener was to try to, they could generate within them a certain kind of spiritual feeling. It's very, you can think of it as an inverted mysticism, where you feel an ecstatic high off of absolute deformity and suicidal nihilism. I mean, everybody, if I say to people that there's no tomorrow and that there's no morality, there's no good and evil, all there are just events. And the events, we can judge them as being good or evil if we want to, but that's just us making it up. And all there are just meaningless events in a random universe that's completely unguided by anything. And you have no more value than that rabbit that you were talking about. These
that life has no purpose.
Yeah, there's no point to anything. Everything is just random atoms, just flopping around as whatever they do down there in quantum space. If you started to believe those things, okay, I can disprove every single one of them in 2 seconds. But if you started to believe those, you would experience a mental change, a radical mental change. Okay, if you would look at yourself differently, you would feel differently, and in interesting ways, if you really lived through those day to day and believed them to be true. Now, if you coupled those thoughts, those ideologies about reality, with intense meditation, you will develop, amazingly, what you can call a sadomasochistic euphoria. Euphoria, of course, is a feeling like a high, a literal high that you'll feel. You'll develop a sadomasochistic high, and you'll see the entire universe in terms of this madness. And things like pain will become joyful, and things like the murder of, well, I don't know how extreme you want to go here on this show, John,
sure,
but things like murder of children will become joyful, just like we've seen troops in various wars, exhibit this. And it's very difficult for people to understand because this is so radically different than what you have lived, the average person has lived through their life. But that's just because you have not cultivated this part of you that we've had engineered within us. And it's the whole point of the world is, well, let me put it this way. The Illuminists, what they use the world for is a theater for their dark ecstasy. That's why the entire world is starvation and, these earthquakes where everybody's, having blocks fall over them and hundreds of thousands dying. Fabricated hurricanes like Hurricane Katrina, 9/11. So the whole world is this den of destruction and poverty and sadness. And I know a lot of people want to think, oh, it's just great, while they're sitting there at their job all day looking at the time clock, can't wait till it's 5 o'clock. If it's so great, then, why is every day like that for you? Where you're just looking to get home so you can watch TV and take your pills. So we have to.
Let me mention that to some of those that are listening are familiar with the Bible. There's a verse that Paul is attributed to writing, and where he says that he struggles against the flesh, and I think that when you're talking about how we're programmed, actually built to allow this to express itself through us mentally, spiritually, and physically, that perhaps that's what he was talking about, is that struggle against this inclination, this programming, is because there's also, folks, there's a divine, a beautiful, a perfect, a love creator, and that this is about the choice between these two. But we must understand and take serious the enemy, because it is formidable and it is absolutely everywhere, and you have been blind to it your entire life. And being aware of your enemy is the first step in being able to overcome your enemy. We've got about a minute left. What else could you share with us on that?
Well, the average person has been tricked into thinking there aren't these extremes of spirituality, the dark and then the ecstatic of light, which St. Paul perfectly illustrated in the Bible. We've been conditioned to think that we're all just supposed to be, sort of unfeeling robots that go to our jobs. That's not real human life. Real human life is in one of these two extremes. And if you doubt that, go study the Native Americans and how they lived, for example, and go study various religious systems and real religious seekers who made spirituality their daily experience. Their whole life was a prayer. The unusual situation is the despiritualized Americans who just basically just fit the perfect definition of a slave class, and they all think that they're, that this is the best of all worlds. That how absurd can it be? I mean, all you need to do is just study all the freedom and free time that the Native Americans had, and they didn't even have to buy food and buy homes, and everybody had the same sort of home, and you could just build it from the land, and then take it to, if you needed to move, you can move it quickly. You're not imprisoned to some neighborhood and so forth. I mean, the ignorance that we have and the arrogance over our situation is stunning. I hate to say, not to be too disheartening, but it's really surprising as to how Americans can think that living in a system where they have jobs that they don't like and they're away from their families and so forth, that they can think that they're free.
Yeah, what an illusion we are living in, keeping up with the Joneses. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. I am discussing the Illuminati's religion, folks, with my new co-host, Professor Jeffrey Grupp. And Jeff, you were just mentioning in there about how the Illuminati, or the Nephilim behind everything, are actually using the entire world as a stage for their enjoyment. And I wanted to mention that my take on that is that, they've set up cameras absolutely everywhere now. Of course, we've got satellite hovering almost every square inch can be seen. I wonder if they're not setting up for the great suffering or slaughter so that they can sit back and